radiology, laparoscopy, behavioral and mental health, along with many other services. Contact us for more information at 235-5479.
Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, The Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
WESN.
Well, we're back and better than ever. Now, a couple of things to get through before the good lady herself joins me today, because while the budget debate may have had some hiccups, and the former Minister of Finance, she shared a perspective which is not necessarily in disagreement with what I said yesterday, but perhaps goes further along the lines of why was it allowed to happen the way that it happened, of which you could possibly put blame on both sides. But before we get into that, a few things to get through. One of the most important things is, well, we are at the end of an era, not necessarily the largest footnote in the history of TNT, but rather something that some have anticipated and have yearned for quite some time. Others, perhaps like myself, it's more just a matter of fact, a transitory period. The Chief Justice has decided to officially retire, and this is the day officially, I believe, of his retirement. This, of course, has led to articles in the morning papers with regards to the fact that he's going to retire, but also with regards to some of his history, what he may or may not have accomplished, what controversies may or may not have happened under his tenure, etc., etc. Of course, there's the thank yous that come from those in the official positions, which again, I think we've reached the point where unless you have a smoking gun of something that is pressing that you think the now former Chief Justice did wrong, unless you have some clear evidence, this is one of those situations where perhaps it's best to let the man go on his retirement. The main clarion call of his critics during his tenure, as far as I'm aware, is for him to be replaced, and you're essentially getting that done. He himself stated he did not necessarily see the need to continue to age 70, which he could have given the changes made in the law for judges retiring. Rather, he stuck to, this is what is said in the press, he stuck to the intention of retiring at 65, which he had from the very beginning. Now, I guess the real question, it's not about what the former CJ did or didn't do and how much blame he's supposed to have whether it's theoretical blame, actual blame. I'm sure he'll still have people that hate him. He may have people that love him. I myself don't necessarily know what to make of him. He seemed to be more than happy to not necessarily play the game, but exist comfortably within the game of politics that our politicians essentially maintain. The real question is, who's going to replace him now? And to what extent will we see partisan politics enter into this situation? And you might want to say, well, don't ascribe that to the UNC. Listen, it's not about whether the UNC is the best thing since sliced bread, different to the PNM. It is a question that you have regardless of how shiningly perfect a political party or entity might be. You ask these questions because when you're at a transition period, you don't just assume the best, no matter how good your resume, no matter how great the track record. That is not necessarily a sin of making a mistake, because you might end up with a good situation. You have a government with a potentially, this is a hypothetical. You have a government with a good reputation, so the temptation is to just wash your hands of everything, don't really take them on. They won't go wrong. And you might get good decisions. The real sin here, though, however, is the complacency. And the complacency not only takes your eye off the ball, but it actually undermines the integrity of the people you are leaving to deal with it on their own. You don't want to be engaged. You don't want to be bothered. Let them sort it out. They're good, right? They could handle it. You're complacent. Your complacency undermines their mentality, undermines their commitment, undermines their motivation. Road to hell is paved in good intentions. No one is perfect. Why do we act as though the politicians we support are somehow magically perfect? And then when they make a mistake, we want to hide it because, heavens forbid, we acknowledge that they made a mistake. We can't have that. That would be tantamount to saying that they were no good somehow. And thus, that motivates our politicians to act a certain way. And dare I say, it motivates them to end up being no good. We'll all probably have, at some point or another, taken note of what's going on in the United States with their Supreme Court and how the partisan politics has turned that into a crapshoot, where every judgment that they make is questioned. Now, I believe the Chief Justice sits on the Court of Appeal. Regardless, the Chief Justice, being the head of the institution, will then have some influence over many aspects of the judiciary. And all of those decisions will be judged based on the perception of what politics came to play on the situation when the new guy is being selected. Not too dissimilar to Commissioner of Police. Because before Ayla was even selected, there were observations of the process of the selection being potentially tampered with, being potentially undermined politically, and that led us to a situation where then Commissioner of Police, Ayla Christopher, immediately had that pinned on her. Now, you could still debate whether that was right or wrong, whether she was political or not, but regardless, that is the environment she came in with. It did not help that her results were so poor that it suggested that the only reason why she was selected was for political reasons. The thing with the Chief Justice is, because he's been there so long under different administrations, it's not necessarily so easy to pin that on the former Chief Justice. Now, I guess we will have to see what goes on with the future. Will it be someone young like Ivor Archie, who could potentially be in the post for a long time. That's a hell of a commitment. Or will it be someone old, like Erla, who's close to retirement, and in many ways then, without the security of tenure and the time, just the time to implement any sort of meaningful changes, how will they conduct the office as a caretaker if they're only there for a couple of years? In hindsight, I think it's safe to say Ayla was a caretaker commissioner. She wasn't there to make great changes. She wasn't there to innovate and implement a vision for the police service. She was only there for a couple of years. How are you going to have any long-term plan if you are guaranteed to be forced to retire after less than, I think, 6 years? At best, probably closer to 3. Because after only a couple of months, they had to renew a contract post-60. Use one of the first instances they had available to them. Now the new commissioner, he's showing, look, I am here for the long term. I could implement long-term things. I have a vision. I also have potentially the energy to execute said vision. What will we get from the CJ's position? This might be one of the first big tests with regards to showing us what is your mindset for situations like this, that is to say, the mindset of the new government. We have to wait and see, because right now, this is happening in the middle of the budget debate that essentially never was. Right now in the Standing Finance Committee, it seems as though that's where some of the real detailed questions and hopefully answers will be had with regard to this budget, because the debate in the House turned into whatever it is you want to call that. And dare I say, it reflects poorly on everybody in the House. Because I think at this point, forgive me for being so painfully naive as to consider the House of Representatives, is it, to be a singular institution. Because there's no such thing as the House for the government and the House for the opposition. It's one. There's one presiding officer. There's one staff. There's one chamber. They are both sides members of a singular institution. And contrary to the claims of either side, that the other side, they abdicated their responsibility, I would argue, well, both of you all did a very reasonable job at getting us to whatever point we are at now. But a couple of things to get to before we continue on. One of the, well, I'm not too sure how concerned, how worrying we should be over the situation, as Nutrien Limited is looking to have a controlled shutdown of their nitrogen operations at Point Lisas, effective tomorrow. This is due to two things: a lack of reliable and economic natural gas supply that has reduced the free cash flow contribution over an extended period of time. Basically, we have liquidity issues apparently, or we have profitability / revenue issues. And then the second reason is port access restrictions imposed by TNT's National Energy Corporation, who is claiming that Nutrien owes them a significant amount of money in port fees, something that Nutrien is disputing. I don't believe it is reported with regards to how much specifically Nutrien owes. But you may remember there was a report in the newspapers earlier in the month, or the beginning of the month, where NEC was owed, due to port and pair arrears, $610 million. And some of that money was, at the time that the press reported it, was started to have been collected. But for whatever reason, there's a sticking point between this plant and the NEC, which is collecting fees for the use of its port facilities. And I get it, NEC is in a hard place. They need to get their money in order to pay for salaries, maintenance, upkeep, etc., etc. But now the question is, how did we get to this point? And which of the two reasons is the greater contributing factor to the situation? Is it the natural gas supply, which that might be seen somewhat of an inevitability if we are not able to secure more natural gas, and we have projects coming on stream, and the Dragon gas is now back on the table, but not necessarily anywhere close to being cleared, unless Uncle Sam goes in and does you know what, which is not the most popular, nor the most stable thing one could do, or at least there's no guarantees that you could control that situation and prevent it from going out of control. Or is it this port fee situation where the requirement, and we're not talking about a year, 2 years, we're talking about a few months, I believe it is, based on the initial reports, back at the beginning of the month. Well, yeah. Some arrays date back to more than 120 days, 4 months, less than half a year. Is that enough to upset the whole apple cart where we're going to see plant close? Well, it's not going to close. Nutrien is saying that they're going to select, based on merit, essentially a caretaker crew to secure operations and keep the facilities maintained and running and so on. Basically, so we could start it all back up as soon as whatever the situation that is in their minds forcing their hand to suspend operations is resolved. Now, the former Minister of Energy is saying this is the UNC failure. The current Minister of Energy is saying this is the PNM not dealing with the issues that they had to deal with, such as getting contracts, new contracts done over this situation. And of course, there's, I think, a significant amount of jobs on the line, but also this might be a major negative impact to our foreign exchange position because they exported stuff and we got our cut from taxes and so forth out of it. Now, it seems as though the arrears are 4 months in the making. So if that's the case, because that's what NEC is complaining about, well, we're in October, September, August, July, June, that's well within the period of the UNC. But the flip side is, if it's due to the fact that the PNM let me just get what's Nutrien apparently owes several $1 million. We still don't know exactly what is the situation. If the PNM left a situation that caused this, the NEC, under the former administration of Mr. Stuart Young, in over 4 years, failed in over 4 years to negotiate new contractual arrangements with several of the downstream operators. This fell to us as we entered office. It doesn't necessarily make it apparent, though, because, again, at least according to what we understand in NEC, the lack of payment started to happen during the current administration's times in office. It just so happens that the former president at NEC, he announced a week before all of this port fee arrears was made known to the public, he announced his early retirement. There is an anonymous source that says he was forced into pre-retirement. So again, exactly what triggered this the administration, new policies, an inherited situation, the natural gas shortages. We don't know for sure, but it's a lot of jobs and potentially a lot of foreign exchange that we might lose. It's one of the things where it doesn't have to be a lot of foreign exchange for it to hurt us. Every little bit at this point now matters a lot. So we wait and see, because this, to some extent, might tie into the budget. Perhaps it was some sort of position, policy position, fiscal position that they took that had a trickle-down effect. I don't know. This all started technically before the budget was read. We have to wait and see. But the good lady is here, so we'll take a break and welcome her to continue our analysis of the budget, despite the fact that the budget debates, well, look where it is. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after this.
If these walls could talk, they'd cry uncle. They didn't plan to become offices or yoga studios. But they've stood by us, even when we got a little stir-crazy. For that, they deserve some thanks. They deserve Benjamin Moore.
My name is Dr. Joanne Williams-Carroll, and I am the Director of Behavioral and Mental Health at the Community Hospital. At the Community Hospital, we believe in nurturing mind, body, and soul. Through our counseling and chaplaincy program, we will provide you with support and strength you need to help with your mental and emotional well-being.
Give us a call.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
Where good private health care is affordable.
Low energy? Heart concerns? Migraines slowing you down? It's time to take control of your health. Join Wellness Unlocked, the series that brings expert advice and real solutions for a healthier you. In our latest episode, learn how Jameson CoQ10 can help support heart health, boost energy, and even reduce migraines. Get the science, the stories, and the steps to power up your health with CoQ10. Don't miss Wellness Unlocked. Watch now on WESN and start your wellness journey today.
I want to get a tattoo.
You really want
Respond to me. Respond to me how you would respond to me.
The first question I'll ask is why?
Controversial taboo topics.
We get so consumed by church, we forget that we have to live the life of being a Christian outside of the Sunday.
Like you say,
services, yeah.
we think going to a service makes us a Christian.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
So we are about to hear the second time Pastor J wanted to take a tattoo.
Would have been late last year and early this year.
Oh gosh.
Hope Unfiltered podcast with Pastor J and Ren.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3, search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for. It's called loss and damage. And we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region. Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
Our award-winning show is back, and this season promises to be even more exciting than before. What's Up, Doc isn't just a title, it's a call to action for anyone who wants to improve their health and well-being. Join us on this thrilling ride towards better health on WESN Content Capital.
And we're back here on talking about the WSN Content Capital Show. Michael Small, joined by the good lady herself, someone who has a thing or two to say of what happened last Saturday morning, but with regards to the budget debate. But before we get into that, yes, it was 2 a.m. when that happened, right?
That's
but before we get into that and other things, because hey, they actually have limited but still present details on the budget that we could chew on. But the developments with regards to one of our Point Lisa's industrial plants basically saying, hey, we'll shut down by tomorrow. Karen is here to perhaps maybe give us better perspective than I would have, since she's been behind the scenes. Karen, good morning.
Good morning to you, Sean. Yeah, Sean just said, and understandably so, that if you're going to chew on the budget, as he said, you may think there's not a lot to say, but there is a lot to see. Because when you have more time to digest the budget and the commentary, and some good commentary, and you do a deeper dive, then you see the real flaws in that budget, and any kind of view that you may have had that it was not, that what the government was projecting was not accurate. And I will start with this thing that the government says they intend to increase their revenue by 350 million. And you know, that brings me back to an article I read, and I think he's very good. I wish I had an email address for him. Wayne Kubler Singh, he writes Art Opinion, and I think he does an excellent, excellent job. And one of them he did was interpreting the budget, and it was very telling because it goes to the same point that the government is saying they intend to see the revenue increase by 350%. And then I'll read what Mr. Dr. I think he's Dr. Kubler Singh. Yeah. But he says promises are promises win, because it was full of promises. He actually said the word will was used 296 times, the phrase intends 4 times, a grand score of 300 shots of promises. Promises made, promises are delivered, or something like that. Well, that's not true, right? Promises made, promises kept. That's what they kept chanting. And they use strategic words. But the budget will halt property tax. That is not true. You just changed it. A rose is still a rose by any other name. I'm going to deal a little bit with that again. Then using all kinds of buzzwords. He's right. He's correct. Pilfering from other successes. He was right. All that thing with SIP and Mento and Ginger and all these things that are coming on stream. It was not the Brecon Castle solar farm. You cannot take any credit for that. And then saying that the energy sector will grow from I can't remember these percent, but significant. It had nothing to do with you. Nothing at all. Because anything you do will be the ExxonMobil, which we don't even know if they'll be successful. And I already said, and I make no apologies, ExxonMobil is one of the worst partners one could ever have in dealing with our natural gas or oil. It is just one of the worst. I am not saying that they have a globally poor reputation. And I am reinforcing that with what they have done to Guyana and what they continue to do. And I'm not here to talk about that today, but that's no win. And by the way, they got no more deep water success blocks being taken up, 4 out of 27. That's not really good. That was the same as the year before. And then this one is an ultra deep water, not just deep water, So whenever that does, if it comes, which I hope it does, it ain't going to be this fiscal year. It's not going to be this fiscal year. Same thing with the Dragon Field, which you are taking too much credit for. And I don't know what's going to happen now, what's happening now on the Venezuela-United States front. There's a whole set of things going on in geopolitics, especially with the resignation of the commander-in-chief of the Southern Command. Yeah, Southern Command. That's saying a lot because apparently he expressed concerns about the reason that Trump was using for trying to go in and put the CIA there and so on. So I don't know what's going to happen with that. And you cannot take much credit. You got 6 months to negotiate. You have to give credit where credit is due. 30 at least you did not get it. It was the PNM. So don't take credit for something you cannot take credit for. And we do not know what will happen with the Dragon Field. We don't know what's going to happen. So please don't take credit for things that you didn't achieve. And so that was something that I found was worrying. And now, today's papers, you're saying you will have 350% increase in revenue because you will be doing and intend to do this, and this will happen, and this will. Hey, you know what that's called? Wishful thinking, because it's not being reflected in reality. They had the joint committee meeting. Yeah. Right, and things that came out. You have made no allocation for the increase in NIS payments for public servants who already get a pension, which is non-contributory. They do not contribute to their pension, unlike the rest of the world. UK, Australia, America, you name it, they all contribute. The pension is non-contributory. It's also not inflation indexed, which is unfortunate because a lot of people who worked in the public service and live longer lives now end up in almost penury. So they may have had good jobs, but they have to rely on renting out their property or renting out part of their property or having hopefully invested in a property to give them a source of income. So they not only get that, but they get the NIS. And since you have increased the NIS payments, where are you getting them? And you said you didn't know. Well, I didn't say you didn't know, but you hadn't allocated it.
How bad is it that they didn't budget for the increases? Because the Minister of Finance is trying to say, well, hey, we don't know what it's going to be like. But Hans Devines, a political newcomer, he and all are saying, well, look, in finance, you budget for things to come.
That's a huge number. That's just a huge.
Because it's not going to be small, right?
It's not, because the number one, the public servants are the number one debt. It's what you could say that the government has, or payment they have to make. Expense, thank you. Thank you, because that is right, but it's like that in a way. But anyhow, not only that, the 10% increase for PSA, you have not made any allocation for it. And now I'm hearing you say we don't know what it will end up with. I thought you told them it was 10%. I saw them bursting out in glee that now they were getting 10%. Now I'm hearing some kind of backtracking, but we don't know what we haven't started negotiation. We don't know where it will end. They're not singing to right.
Well, let me ask this. When we got the initial figures, right, because you know with the budget, the most important thing, yeah, you'll listen to the preamble, but the most important thing is when you start to get to the revenue estimates, the expenditure, the budgetary allocations. But of course, those first two things, the revenue estimates and the expenditure, will give you the expected deficit. And this budget had a much smaller expected deficit than before. But when you add to the fact that you're not the only one that's questioned, why is the price of oil estimates and natural gas estimates the way that they are? My point is, it seems as though one can make a case you're not putting in certain expenses that you know is coming down the pipe, and you're potentially overestimating revenue. Is it to somewhat just kind of hide the deficit? Because one of the things I believe the PNM is saying is, after these negotiations, you're going to have this big wage bill increase. It's going to add to the deficits.
But, okay, so the point about it is, your expenditure is unrealistic. It is unrealistic, right? Because you have not added for that the 10% increase in salary, and now you're backtracking. This is what Tanku said. There's been no negotiation started. So the assumption of 10, 12, 0, 5% is irrelevant. Your version of accounting might be different, but as a government, we have to wait negotiations before putting arbitrary figures. I thought you said it was 10%.
So am I correct? You're interpreting as saying, oh, 5 or 0% is a possibility.
But what he's saying is,
basically,
using the word negotiations, he's backtracking and saying we haven't started negotiations yet, and he's talking 10, 12, 0, 5. So what the bottom line to all of that is, that if the PSA thought it was 10%, that is not what he's indicating here. And even if it is 10%, he did not allocate anything in the expenditure from the budget for that huge increase in salaries. Which I'm not against. I'm not against it. Well, I am sort of, because it's not good for the country. But I understand the position of the public servants who say they have not gotten an increase in 2013. So all I'm saying, I'm not looking at it from that point of view.
I mean, they were voted in knowing that this is a promise they made. So, it's, you know.
Right, so that is what I'm saying. So when you tell us that you have not allocated any money for the which now they don't only get their non-contributory pension, but they qualify for the NIS. So the employer has to pay 2/3, you 1/3. He has not budgeted for the increase. He said he didn't. And it's thousands of public servants you're talking about. He did not budget for it. It's there. Look at what they said. He said, finance said during the standing finance committee, they asked him about online matters, and they said that when they actually look, the government, the opposition looked at the actual heads of expenditure that they actually allocated funds for. It was 50 billion, not 50 billion out of the 59 billion they're saying that the budget is going to be because of the, so they were saying they were going to have a fiscal deficit of 3.8, but based on the fact that you allocated nothing for these items in the budget, it's looking more like 9 billion. I mean, I find that, I will tell you something, huh?
Well, now we got the news this morning. I think you said you wanted to, I don't know if you want to still speak on it with Nutrien.
Well, yeah, but this is all part of the big picture.
Right.
The big picture is you gave us a budget, and you gave the impression that you are going to have a fiscal deficit of 3.8%. But when the opposition drilled down on your figures, the 10% looks like it's not 10% anymore. But even if it is 10%, there's no allocation in the budget for it, no for the increase in NS. And a lot of the things that you are making allocation, you don't know what will happen. And that goes to Nutrien. If you read between the lines, now, I don't have any personal knowledge of anything besides what I read in the papers, like everybody else. But I do have a sense from being in government already, so I have a sense of what may be at play. When you read through that thing with Nutrien, my understanding, although SIP and Mento came on stream, and yes, there was an increase in Q4 of the growth because of that, and that's what the central bank reported, but it did not sustain itself. And the IMF has said that they have decreased our growth to only 1%, right? And where is that growth coming from? The fact of the matter is Nutrien is telling us something, you know. You are playing hardball with them. I don't know the ins and outs of it, so I am speaking with the ignorance that I do have, but in terms of lack of knowledge. But I am saying, you hear what they're saying? They're saying you were supposed to provide 2-point-something million, whatever, of
natural gas.
No, of ammonia, whatever. No, they.
Or the feedstock, yeah.
Yeah, no, not the feedstock. Nutrien provide urea and ammonia.
Right.
Right? And the feedstock for that is natural gas. They are telling us they don't have the natural gas here. They're also telling us that it's more expensive to do business in Trinidad in North America. They're also telling us, according to what they said, the part of the reason they've stayed here, and they have 4 plants, and they said only 3 of the 4 plants can be utilized because they don't have enough natural gas to all of them. They're also saying it's cheaper to manufacture, if is want of a better word, those things in outside of Trinidad and Tobago, and they're one of the largest producers of fertilizers in the world. You understand what they're telling you? So where are you getting this natural gas from? It's not from ginger. is not from Dragon Field. That's where you expect it to come from. And if it's banking on Mento and SIP to do anything, even with Mento and SIP, you can't get much of an increase. The IMF is telling you that. And on top of that, you have to realize that these projects that Shell and BP takes on, they're for LNG, you know. That's why there's, for the upstream industry, for them to export there, where we do not make that much revenue. The revenue is in the downstream, where we sell that natural gas to the downstream industries, and they are being starved of gas. I mean, and it's not only Nutrien. They're saying that other players in the police estate are facing the same problems of lack of access to the port. So you're playing hardball with them. I don't know if there's something I'm missing, but from how Nutrien is talking, they could pick up their bags and say sayonara. That's what I'm understanding them to see, and that's where your real revenue, other than the non-oil revenue, is going to come from. Not from LNG, it's from the downstream.
And just the shutdown of this plant could severely impact our foreign exchange position.
But that's what it is. That's what it means. That's exactly what it means. And if you read it, if you read the article, I read it, it was in The Guardian. If you read it, read what they're saying. You must read, read between those lines. They're telling you Nutrien could have shut down long ago because high natural gas prices in Trinidad made its products uncompetitive and operations financially unsustainable. The company and others in the industry remain open, mainly due to their commitment to stuff. Well, that's what they said. Because the business environment was favorable. They said that, what did they actually say? They got a quotation from Nutrien's head. In any case, what they are saying is that they could pack up.
Yeah.
They could pack up.
That the circumstances were not ideal. And as they get worse and worse and less advantageous, because at the end of the day, they're there to make a profit, not there to provide us with foreign exchange, right? That's the private sector. It's more efficient, but if they're not making money, why would they bother? Yes, you could say, they invested in so much. But if it's going to make a loss, you might as well close up shop.
This is what they said. They said their operations was to give them 2.2 million tons of annual capacity, now 1.27. in 2024. And this is the head of Nutrien in Trinidad. Like many other producers here in Trinidad and Tobago, we don't have an abundant supply of gas. That's really downstream. That's what LNG is the upstream. And who are they main investors, Shell and BP? You think they're not going to take the lion's share of that gas? That's the problem. So we face certain restrictions in natural gas supply. We're not able to run our facilities full out. This is a significant challenge for us. So, I mean, if you don't want to read that message, I'm sure it's a message to the Minister of Energy. I'm sure it's a message to him too. But it's a message to us in this country that where is this money coming from? And then in non-oil revenue, a lot of it is going to come from borrowings. If you look at the fifth, and also from sales, because the fifth pillar, if you read the budget, their fifth pillar deals with optimizing, and they use fancy words, but if you read the pillar, not the fifth pillar, it was the first pillar. The fifth pillar is about people-centered sort of thing. But the first pillar or second pillar uses terms like optimization, and they don't use the word sale. Looking for it. Oh yes, commercializing and optimizing public assets. What does that mean? What does that mean? Refinery? What does that mean? And then they're not telling you about how much financing they have to will have to undertake to meet the budget deficit, which is significant. Look at the oil is 11 billion, non-oil is 43 billion. Where's that coming from?
Yeah, that oil estimate on revenue is significantly lower than last year as well. And why? I guess that's one of the things that's not clear with regards to this budget. Why? The non-oil is also significantly higher, but I guess you still have questions. How did you get these figures?
Okay, and another thing I want to say before I move on, in a general statement, I would like the government to more clearly say, well, first of all, what is a transfer and what is a subsidy? Because it seems to me every time they use the words transfer and subsidy, they're talking about CPF and URP. It just seems to me all the grants that are made. And that is not a correct reflection of transfers and subsidies. Many of the transfers, they include HSF. That is a transfer because you take in the money if you meet the 10% from the consolidated fund and put in the HSF, and it's counted as expenditure, even though it's an investment vehicle. But so that your expenditure numbers are going to increase. So HSF counts as an expenditure. Also, the IDF, Infrastructural Development Fund, because you're transferring money from consolidated to the IDF, that's an expenditure. Okay, so those are two things I wanted to say, that, and so that the HSF and the IDF make it very clear. You might think it's revenue, yes, because it does generate revenue from its investments, but for the national budget, it counts on the expenditure side, increasing the fiscal deficit. Okay, and the other thing I wanted to say is now with this NIS, you know, the NIS, just to make it very clear that, that as I just said, there's no allocation for the increased contribution from the government for the NIS. And that is going to be significant. Where are they getting the money from? He can't tell you where he's getting the money from. And I also want to put on the table, maybe the public servants may get upset with me about this, but they do not contribute to their pension. Now, it's not an index, it's not inflation index pension, so it doesn't go up with time, you know, and according to inflation, cost of living. But it is, you do not contribute to it, which most countries contribute to their public pension. And in addition, you get the NIS pension once you contribute at least 750, and then you get something if it's less than 750 contributory points, is you're getting 2 sets of pensions. And then the idea of the private pension, the difference between a private pension and a public pension is the private pensions are contributory. You do not get a private pension unless you contribute. So whilst you can say we get the NIS because we contribute to it, that is people working in the private sector, they also have to contribute to their private pension, unlike public servants who do not, which I think is, you know, something we have to put on the table.
No, I just, again, it goes back on to whose money and how much money. And
right, so another thing I want to say is, so I mentioned the NIS and no allocation for it. I mentioned the NIS with relation to the pension, public service pensions, to which they do not contribute, plus they get the NIS. And yes, private pensions, private persons do get the NIS if they contribute, which they are required to do so by law, but they also contribute to their own pension, their private pensions, right? So that deals with that. With regards to the, this thing with the property tax, I read an article today. I don't know, with all due respect to the person, I'm not sure what they meant with bringing back land and building tax. I'm not sure what they meant, but I don't think they're really serious about that. And for all those who say that the landlord and business surcharge is not a tax, it is a tax, and it's a tax on property, because it is revenue which is generated for the government from the income you generate or receive from renting out your property. What is that? You just tell me if that, the major difference, 2 major differences. 1, business is now included. 2, it's not your resident, unless like many public servants, many people have to end up renting on part of their property because their income just cannot sustain them. People living longer lives. But having said that, it is a tax on property. So whatever they want to say, ask the tax. We're not bringing back property tax. Okay, but a rose is still a rose, whatever you call it. So that's what that is. And matter of fact, as I already said last week, it is apart from the fact that your residential property is not included, it is a harsher tax. An impression this government gave is the reason why they did want that tax, was because they were so harsh and uncaring and doing something to poor people and putting them going to forfeit their property if they didn't pay it, and all kinds of mischief they were spreading, right? But the reality is, you are telling us we have to pay a registration fee, a one-time registration, $2,500. That's not a little bit of money, you know. Then you're telling us that if the property is worth more than $20,000 a year, which is how many people renting a property for $1,500 a month? Most people going $2,000. That's the most of the properties rented in Trinidad. I'm talking about the residential property. The government, the former government, it was 2%. Your own is 3.5% on anything over $20,000 a year. You are being harsher. Not only that, you are being harsh. Do not put the wool over your eyes on people who want to put the wool over their eyes. You are also being harsher because under the former administration, it was 10% was taken out of the annual revenue that you were assessed at. They don't take anything out. They're taxing you on the full amount that you receive as actual revenue, and you're paying 3.5% on that in most instances, and paying this registration fee. How that is better? The government is starved for tax, and they could tell you what they want. They could dress it up how they want, and you want to be faithful. You have to open your eyes and see, because if the other administration had done what they have done, you would call it for what it was. You would see it for what it was. Now, the good positive thing I've already said, and one thing I want to just say again, I think one of the reasons why they want all the properties that are rented and commercial properties are rented and pay this registration fee, because it will give gen tax, which is a better sense of all taxpayers in this country who are getting income from properties. That's what they try to get, so to make them more effective.
But I think here's one of the situations, looking at certain property laws and taxes and regulations in Los Angeles and New York, you're going to find that what you said, over a certain threshold, you pay the 3.5, right? Now what will happen is, because there will be properties, old properties, that the rents are low, right? Landlords will have no incentive to do any sort of work to renovate anymore. You see, before you had something like this, what you're going to do, you're going to try and maximize your property. Now that you have potentially to pay more, right? Because there's margins to this. It's not as though you could just take all the rent and not pay off the renovation work, not pay the maintenance for the property, etc. So you have to budget all of that in. So now, similar to Nutrien, you put certain things to make the situation harder. There'll be landlords that's like, why am I going to renovate for? I'm just going to leave my crappy little apartment, because I'm not no corporation guy. I'm not part of the 1%, as you pointed out.
You don't have to be 1%. You could just have to be part of the 30%.
Right.
That's how many people will be hurt by this.
Because there are a lot of landlords who they have 1 apartment, 2 apartments. It's part of their retirement. I know somebody, she has a property, there's 2 apartments that she lives with.
I know many people.
That's her retirement. She's not a millionaire.
Especially when your pension is not indexed, is not inflation indexed. So it's not going to be increased based on the cost of living. People are living longer lives. When your parents died at an earlier age, for many people, you are living maybe on medication, but you're living longer lives. And medication costs a whole lot of money. So when you're paying all that money, and I give the government credit for the CDAP, they've expanded the CDAP, and they also expanded the CDAP, the range of medication they're offering. And I saw a private sector organization say they are going to start buying the medication wholesale rather than buying it retail, which is a good thing. So, so that's a good thing. But the reality is, you're going to find so many people, it's not only residences, you have a little downstairs, living upstairs, you're running a little parlor downstairs. You're running a little grocery or little whatever downstairs. There are a lot of people in that position. So they may not be paying residential, the 3.5% on their residence, but they're paying it on that commercial property. And what you actually rent it for, if you're renting it out to get income, right? If you're renting, and then if you're not doing that, you're paying tax on it anyhow, for another, not on the surcharge, but another form of tax. So however you look at it, what is the harsh thing is you campaigned so hard on the axi tax. We're not going to bring it back. What do you think people understood it to mean? What do you think people understood it to mean? They understood it to mean, which is not right, because I think everybody knows we should pay some form of property tax.
Yes.
Right? I think we understand that.
But that's the other thing. The reason why you pay it is so it goes to local government, so it could maintain the things local government's supposed to maintain. As far as I'm aware, this is not going to local government.
No, but I will tell you this, with regard to that point you're making, and that's where, well, listen, they haven't said it yet, so let us not, preempt. Yes, let's not preempt, because years ago, the intention was to take the property tax, which was much at all. I mean, it cost you more under the land and building taxes regime to go and pay tax on your piece of land if you might be living in Point Fortin and it's in Tuco. I mean, the gas alone is more than what you had to pay. So what the intention was, as I understood it, the intention was that you would then put it towards the regional corporations and the councils so they could use that money collected from that tax to facilitate and help with the management and, maintenance of your area. But it was decided not to do that. It was decided to make it part of the consolidated fund, so there was no setting aside specifically for local government. So I don't know what the plan is for this government. But even now, that in itself creates a little problem, because all corporations are not equal. Living in Westmoreland, and no offense to that, you know what I mean? It's not, I'm not, anyway, anywhere that has,
the congested areas are going to have more rent.
Not only that, the high end are going to have more rent. For instance, I know people knew under the old system that some people are advocating for, they were paying 10%, yes, under the municipal corporation now, 10% of property done valued since 1970. You understand? That was what they were paying. So anyhow, coming off that point, the point is we don't know if that is going to cause another set of inequalities, because certain corporations will have more highly funded, because if that money is given to local government as opposed to others. Now, it may balance itself out, because certainly urban areas need more of those facilities than a rural community. You know, there are more demands on that.
Yes.
So that, which brings me to the point that I don't understand this government. You know, isn't that curious? Isn't that curious that 8,000 ghost workers in CPEP, 80% of the workers in CPEP are ghost workers? Now, I know they must have ghost workers. You think anybody believe that? You come in and say that, you know what that is for? I might be wrong. I might be wrong. But that's to set the stage. One is set the stage, send them all these people under the thing of corruption. Well, when it was 2010, 2050, why you didn't do it? Why you didn't do it then? If there was so much corruption you were fighting against? Because your own government was so corrupt. You fired 20 ministers. Go and check it. 20 ministers were removed from their position. Starting with, I won't say because apparently I think I offend her, Mary King. You talk about Jack Warner, Anand Ramlogan, Gary Griffith, Chandra Sharma. The list goes on and on. 20 people you move from your thing for allegations of wrongdoing or suspicions. I don't think she moved, anyway. She moved a lot. So you had no problem with it then? Why you have a problem now? Because you know what? And you keep saying, I read it in the papers today again, East-West corridor got the lion's share. Of course they would. That's the urban community. If you're living in the urban community, you have marketplaces, you have the cemeteries, you have built-up areas, garbage collection. There's so much more demand in urban areas than they are in rural communities. But what do you do with your regional corporation? This is what you do. I mean, it is disgraceful. I mean, playing this kind of thing, and you say, all of us win, all of us do not win. The 2026 UNC regional corporations, 120% increase for Chaguanas to 20.71 million. So they really were underfunded, I think, because Chaguanas is a built-up area. So I definitely was underfunded, I believe. Princestown, they said the same over 20 million. Pinal Debe got 122% increase. And they may be able to justify it, but look at, except for Port of Spain, which has a huge budget and only got a deduction of 714, San Fernando got 4.4 million less. Arima, well, that one was worst. They had it's nearly 10 billion. 10 million, nearly 10 million reduction.
It's interesting how they won a San Fernando seat, and now they might be giving the PNM ammunition to reclaim that seat in the next election.
And then point 14 too. So all the PNM regional corporations substantially got deductions, except for Port of Spain. And all the UNC-led regional corporations got a substantial increase in their allocation, right? So you add that to shutting down CPEP, shutting down URP, shutting down the forestry on the excuse of corruption. I'm sure there was, but that's not the reason to send so many people on the breadline. And then you have this minister talking about whoever is the manager, saying 8,000 girls. You know what you're setting them for? I mean, I don't know for sure, but I feel that what you want to do is when you rationalize this new entity, he's going to make provision for about 8,000 workers. I don't know why I feel so. I don't know why.
I'd just like to point out, those of us who are living in areas that are a little bit bushier now than before, while, yes, no one is disputing the fact that there's probably things to clean up, or there probably were things to clean up by CPEP. Listen, part of it was, we saw gangs regularly, in these parts at least. Now, we can't say that out of the 20 people that you might see at any one time, all 20 were working. But the point is, you could improve the situation But did we? Because right now, there's a lot of areas that look like they need a haircut really badly.
And you know, Sean, you have to understand the genesis of these programs. So let's go to the reality. And actually, those programs are counted as employment. Eh?
Right, but you realize how the replacements are going completely away from the genesis of these programs.
Right, and if they want to say that the PNM is guilty of that, and I would agree with that, yes, I would agree that that is true, because these kinds of programs are all over the developed world, so-called, or emerging economies and developing economies. And that is a form of poverty alleviation, and it is part of creating a job and also skills training. So if you look at it as only, well, my bush is not going high, and they're only giving certain people the jobs. If you're going to start doing it, you're politicizing it, and frankly speaking, you're not understanding that every country, just as you said in your fifth pillar, this is what your fifth pillar said, you know, you said protecting the people through social investment and safety nets, because that is part of a responsible government. A government is a macro version of the micro, a micro circumstance. Every family may have a child or person who cannot, shall not, will not work, because they may have a disability, because they're just on drugs or doing something that they shouldn't be doing. They don't have the education. So it is a way of creating, and it is the government's responsibility to make sure the program works well. But not to shut it down and then using that excuse, because it is an excuse. I'm confident you did not have to shut it down. And in any event, we will find out if you were right or wrong when this matter goes all the way to the Privy Council. But I am saying to you that you can't just look about it cleaning the sidewalks or doing that. You are providing, the intention was to give especially single mothers and persons who had no education, who had a criminal record. It might not have been a serious one, hopefully not a serious one, but could not find jobs, and therefore you're making them very, very vulnerable to getting involved in criminal activity. The devil makes work for idle hands. So the idea was to do that, as all developed countries will do, and then give them a little bit of skills training, not to make it incent to be able to balance a budget, run a household, start a little parlor. And if it is that it went off track, you also have to take responsibility for that too, because you were in there for 5 years, and what did you do about it? And I genuinely believe that this has more to do with not everybody winning. And the last one I want to make in relation to that is a continuum. You must connect the dots, you know. Connect those dots. I connect them. The last one is the...
well, can we wait, because we have Arima.
Okay, I want to talk about Diwali.
Okay, sure. Arima on the line, however.
Go ahead.
Take the call. Good morning, caller. You on the air?
Sure, Michael. So, good morning to you.
Morning.
And yes, good morning.
Morning to you. Morning.
Wow. These last couple of weeks weren't easy. Oh, why I say it wasn't easy? In looking at leading up to the budget and then afterwards, I want to say I was impressed with Brand Manning.
I was too.
But I was disappointed in the opposition. And I'm going to tell you why I was disappointed in him. Now, truth be told, former Prime Minister Rowley and Stuart Young keep saying that in 2015, when PNM came to office, they only had money to run the country for 3 days. So, all the rhetoric that people have been saying, well, what you do in the last 10 years and what only do in the last 10 years, she is supposed to remind them that when we came into power in 2015, the treasury was literally empty. Understand what I'm saying? Because when they talk about what happened, the development in this country in the last 10 years and what it should have been, they forgot that in the 5 years between 2010 and 2015, UNC was there. And what I saw UNC do that time, I see them doing it again. Because they're coming to settle most of the wage negotiations with the workers. Now the chamber will be happy. Because with money, people will spend. So their businesses will flourish. So they must be happy.
Inflation, though.
Yeah,
but
that is
I, on the other hand,
sorry.
Go ahead.
I wasn't impressed with the budget. And I'll tell you why. I didn't hear a land use policy because one of the things that the Prime Minister mentioned early when Mr. Modi was here was that she was looking at pharmaceuticals and certain things that we could make here instead of import. I hear no talk about no new industrial estates to construct factories to build these things. Currently have 77,000 acres of land mine, that's what they give out to the farmers. I ain't hear nothing about that in terms of what you see out for this piece of land. Remember Amy Brown talking about the amount of chicken that we import in this country. And I was thinking, you know, there's a way to go. I hear that. I was also thinking about cocoa farmers. Because left up to me, half of Santa Cruz are done bulldoze already. The demand for Trinidad cocoa is high. I ain't hear nothing about that. All I hear is rhetoric and when you can see who win and who win, but I ain't seen Trinidad winning here. The next thing too, the property tax. Now for me personally, the property tax should be like $100 on a bedroom in a house. So a person with a 3-bedroom house pay $300. Because I have receipts here stating that our old land and building taxes was $20 for the year. So to move from $20 to $300 would be fairly reasonable because in most communities you want your road fixed, you want lights, you want your rubbish picked up. They want it in a certain standard. And if the population are not understand, well, you gotta pay for that. $100 a bedroom, suffer it to be so. The next thing I wasn't hearing was on commercial property. What will be the tax on them? Is the government really serious about raising revenue this time? Especially with that situation with Venezuela. Because we have a license and we don't know how long Trump's boat will stay in the sea there. They could stay there for the next 6 months. The OFAC license that you get that time expire because it's 6 months. You don't know what can happen out there. So that is another income stream that is possibly cut off. And the last thing I want to say, the cost of living is going to rise. It is. When I think of this government, try and spell Saddam backwards and pronounce that. And that is what I think about this government and the country. Have a good day, people. Please don't say it on.
Thank you, caller. I haven't figured out what it is just yet. But a lot to get through. I don't know. I was hearing, I think, a tone in the background, but we'll leave that. I don't know if you have anything to add.
I mean, what the thing about the property tax? I don't understand what you're saying. If you're making an income from, if it's the commercial property, they didn't distinguish. Both of them are the 3.5%.
The point is, it's a rent to draw from.
Yes, but you get an income from it, and they're telling you you're going to pay a tax on it. That's what property tax is. And going back to what you were saying about the land and building taxes, you see, there was, if you lived in the municipal code, which is San Fernando, 5 of them, San Fernando, Port of Spain, Arima, Chabonas, Point Fortin, they were paying, they had a thing of 0 to 10%. And even if they were paying the 10%, many of them, like Port of Spain, had not done a revaluation of their properties in 1970. So properties in St. Clair must be $100.
We have Digger Martin on the line. We'll take the call.
Yeah, please,
and we do have some comments to get to as well. But Digger Martin on the line. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Good morning, Sean, and good morning to the former Minister of Finance, Mrs. Pera.
Morning.
I want to slightly, and I'm begging your indulgence to give me the opportunity to speak on something else. And that is the resignation of the Chief Justice and the vacation of the President, I believe, and we haven't heard how long she has gone for. And I want to ask the question aloud, was it a coincidence or it was planned? The fact that the CJ has decided to go from his vantage, did he believe he was in the crosshair of the new Attorney General? The new Attorney General made some pronouncements, as I read it, I think yesterday or the day before. We are in a state of a type of anarchy, he said. And he has, since he has come into office, there are a number of pronouncements he has made. I don't want to go down the conspiracy theory, but I get in a sense that this whole embargo that will happen down the road or fairly soon is tantamount to the Emailgate affair, where issue was put out into the public by some unknown person dropping information in a mailbox. 3 days ago or 4 days ago, we had News Source, Pepper Source, put something that was public, to me was public mischief, where she alluded to the president going abroad might have something to do closely with the Prime Minister and the Attorney General and the safe houses, causing public mischief. And what I am seeing that the same sort of people are promoted this sort of disinformation. You have the former Prime Minister, Mr. Young, Stuart Young. You had a couple of other people going with it and promote it and doing all sort of things. The key factor in this, to me, in the Emailgate situation, you had a president who did nothing with the information when the then Prime Minister, when the then opposition take it from him. He had it in his hand for six months. You have a president, and I'm asking the question aloud, is this public mischief again? Is she abdicating her responsibility for choosing a new Chief Justice? I'll go on and have a next one.
She doesn't choose the she does not choose the new Chief Justice. You know that the president of this country
through
is
her office. Yeah.
Yes, it's just through office. The Judicial Legal Service Commission is the body that chooses and makes the recommendations. And clearly, if the Prime Minister is the one in charge, in reality, the Section 83, some provision to that effect, I think it's Section 83 or thereabouts, that says that the president shall follow any decision of cabinet. She has to follow it. She may be the head of, the only time you saw the president having any real thing was the 1818. Other than the 1818, this decision was made by the Prime Minister, as it was made with regard to Archie. You think Archie became Chief Justice if the Prime Minister and the Cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago didn't approve it?
Yeah.
But that's how it is.
All right. We still have some stuff to get to with regards to the end of the budget, but before that, we have Trinity on the line, so we'll take the call. Good morning, caller, you're on the air.
Morning, Sean Michael. Small morning to Mrs. Nunez Teixeira.
Morning.
Principi calling. Right. You hear me clear, right?
Yes.
Very clearly.
Right, good. Let's go. We have to have a conversation on our country's development, medium, short to long term. I would pay anything to listen to a conversation between George Padmore, Lee Kuan Yew, and Lloyd Best with regard to country's development, stages of development, and what we do with regard to moving our country from stage to stage to sustainability and growth. Having a conversation in 2025 about poverty alleviation, it kind of irks me, knowing fully well that as far back as 1983, money was no problem. What was the developmental program? We have poverty alleviation. People want to start a little shop, a little this, a poverty thing, a little this and a little that and a little of the other. Poorly educated people. What's going on? So much years of resources and education, resources put into education and development, and we come into the end game of people cutting grass as poverty alleviation. Something wrong with our movie. It's all right. My point is this. There are things that need to be done in the short term, and we can criticize the government, rightly so, for not solving the problem with regard to our meeting up of our environment with cutting grass and so on, right? But CPEP was started off as an agricultural effort, you know. It didn't start off as cutting grass and painting stone. It ended up to be cutting grass and painting stone as poverty alleviation and so on. Poverty alleviation, having a conversation about poverty alleviation in 2025 is telling ourselves that we really didn't develop ourselves, our education and our skills over the years. And we were not able to change or adapt to the global changes that were taking place. And we had the resources to do it, right? So we have to solve the problem now, right? I'm agreeing, but we have to develop the country in a particular way, and that is the conversation we're supposed to have. Now, telling me something like when the PNM administration came in 2015, they had 3 days to run the country. That's total rubbish. We have no evidence of the balance of payments schedules with regard to that. There was money in the Heritage and Stabilization Fund, with, you know, at when the Rowley administration took office, right? And let us remind the country, right, that former PM Patrick Manning said that guy who took over, Dr. Keith Rowley, is a raging bull, and he's also a pathological liar. So, George Young, Small Pin Young, and Rowley come in to tell me that all you had is three days of cover to run the country. It really don't make sense to me. Let's have a conversation on developing the country, using our resources to develop the country, and see where it goes from there in terms of development. 2025, I having a conversation on poverty alleviation with regard to people cutting grass. It makes no sense. I want to alleviate poverty. I want the problem to be solved in terms of cleaning our environment. But that can't be the conversation of economics and development and country building. It makes absolutely no sense. That is why I'm saying, I'm praying to listen to our conversation with George Padmore, Lloyd Best, and Lee Kuan Yew.
Caller. You're
going
in circles. You're repeating yourself over and over again.
All right.
Thank you, though, for your making your points. Number one, the reality is, now I agree with what you said about the HSF, the foreign exchange, you didn't mention it. All those things, you are correct. But it is also true that the current account situation, which is where the government is able to borrow money, I mean, it's because from the central bank, when I say that they have access to money, was at a state of the current account was 7 billion not in the red, in the black. When the UNC left, they had not only used up the 7 billion, but they had created a deficit of negative 8 billion. 15 billion, so there was absolutely no wiggle room with regard to the current. That is a fact. Now, I do agree with you that that is not the only thing, because there were a number of other things in which we can say that the UNC, and I agree with you on that. What I want to tell you about poverty alleviation, I don't know if you were following what was happening in the UK. Yes, we were colonial, they were our colonial masters. The sun never set on them. Rishi Sunak, who was the Prime Minister for a short time, he said there are so many young people living in England, living on the dole, will not go and find a job. And he told them, you have one, it was a high number, it was a very, very high number. And he said, I'm giving you 1 year to get a job. And if you don't get a job, I'm cutting off the dole. You know why? It suited those Britishers, one of the most developed countries in this world, for those young people to stay home rather than go and work, because the dole was working. So do not talk about how many years. We are a young economy. And number two, stop talking about the cutting the grass. It's not about cutting the grass. Don't you understand it's not about that? Don't you understand it's not about cutting the grass? If you don't understand that, you shouldn't have that discussion with Bess or anybody from my point of view. It's not about that. Every country, Norway, Sweden, every country that we consider having high human development index, the highest in the world, Norway and Sweden, all of them have these projects, because there are people who will not get an education, who fall out of the education system, who have mental and physical problems or who are just bad. You don't think they have the same? It's human nature, it's human nature. So stop putting it down to cutting the grass and painting stones. Do not play that game. Do not play that game. Because if a United Kingdom could have that problem, what are you leaving for us a new thing? And if it is that the government, including the UNC People's Partnership and the former PNM thing. If they did not do the right thing, put the blame on them. Don't blame the blame on the policy.
Okay, we have Kunupi on the line. I do want to respond with regards to, well, the education part of what Karen just said there.
Let me just, I have to say this. You are talking about education. Do you know UTT, COSTAT, Arthur Lockjack School of Business? Do you know that the University of the West Indies had night classes? What are you saying? What are you saying, sir?
Okay, but the caller's waiting, so we'll take Kunupia on the line. Good morning, caller. You on the air?
Hello, good morning.
Morning.
Mr. Shera, good morning. Not Sean.
Morning, morning.
Mr. Shera, calm down a little bit. Calm down a little bit.
It's
so much to say. Sometimes sometimes you just want to say things there, but when other people go on, it just get sidetracked. Mr. Shera,
I was not sidetracked. I dealt with exactly what he brought up, so do not come, because I think I know where you're going to be going. No, I know where he's going. Don't try that with me, please. Don't try that with me.
That is one question.
Don't try that with me.
The other thing I want to ask you, I want to mention about that is that you keep saying, well, you didn't know what they're going to do, and the way they had for the 10%, they didn't cater and whatnot. Could we wait for the mid-year review and hear what's really going on? Because I never know it had mid-year review. It's only recently we started to get a mid-year review. And the other thing is, we're talking much about people being sent home. People being sent home when Petrochen closed down. I can't remember anybody say boo. A lot of things being closed down. I remember from Dunlop, how many years ago, things been closing down, and nobody say, well, look, let me try to see if we could use a piece of wood for a tire. Nobody never say nothing. We just go with the flow. Now everybody complain. Anyhow, there's more I want to say, but I'll call back. Thank you.
Caller, we don't have to wait for the mid-year review on this because we are analyzing the statements of the government. The statements of the government, well, technically the statements of the president, of the new president PSA was starting point 10%. The statements from the government implied, and this is what public-facing speakers do. You're non-committal. So you could say they didn't actually say that they guaranteed a 10%, but it was heavily implied that that was the goal, right? So now that the minister comes out to say, well, it could be 0%. More importantly, it was about the budget and the fact that you have an expected expenditure that you did no planning for. It's one thing to under budget the allocation for that expected from the campaign promises.
You know, it's a good example. CLF is a good example. That you could not have budgeted for that. You didn't know it was happening, but you're going to tell me you don't know you have to pay the 10%. You're not going to tell me you don't know that you have to pay the NIS contribution. You made it.
Arguably, the conservative thing to do is to say, what is the 10%? Put that allocation in the budget. If we don't spend it, fine. We could use that money elsewhere, assuming we ain't using debt to finance
that. Says that they are going back. They say if PSA is getting 10%, well, they want to.
No, I understand that. So, yeah, but in that case, I can understand if you didn't allocate for that. I can understand that. But for your campaign promise, we don't have to wait till the mid-year review because now it comes into question.
They said it in the budget. They said it in
right, they said it in the budget. They said it months before the budget. So it's not that this was something added to the budget last minute. That's the point that I want to make. And the thing is, look, this is what they're telling us. We're going with what they're saying. Right? We're pointing out what you're saying is not necessarily consistent. That has nothing to do with where we'll eventually get with the mid-year budget review. Right? Now, with regards to education, I think one of the things you could argue, not that we haven't had certain aspects of human development, but the effectiveness of it. And that's more to do about what we did around putting things in place. We invested into human capital. We invested into the education system. But there are two flaws with it. One, we never really had a plan for these graduates with gates. And arguably, the poor growth in the private sector to add diversified jobs onto the market limited the utility of GATE. But then the other thing is when you look at the education system from the primary and secondary level, and I got this from, oh gosh, I can't remember her name now, that brought this to my attention. Well, more so primary and secondary, because we have a one-size-fits-all situation, as you pointed out, Karen. You're going to get the range, the full range of human variability with regards to ability, with regards to mentality, with regards to motivation, with regards to background, with regards to wants and desires and capacities.
That was for
right?
CPAP.
No, I know, but the thing is, when you have a one-size-fits-all education system, but human beings cannot fit in one box only, you're going to get people that fall through the cracks.
I don't think you're right about that.
But it leads to what
you know why you're not. You know why you're not.
Why
I feel you're not right, because UTT was started. It used to be John
that's why I said
Donaldson.
not tertiary.
Yeah, but that's what. But listen, what do you think? Who is really going to be able to develop skills training? Whether you go to university or you go to learn a trade at one of the NEC or whatever the name of it, you are being in a better position to contribute to the country. And by the way, on that point, that people love to talk about subsidies. This is from a central bank working paper of October 2022. They say the wealthy enjoy a disproportionate share of the subsidies. You know what that subsidy is? Gate. Gate is it. And you know what else? The electricity, the water, the fuel, even the inter-island trade, the CDAP. This is what central bank said in a working paper. So let me say what I would say. What I agree with Sean. What I agree with Sean is that there was such a move, as I understood it, to bring us to a knowledge economy rather than from a service and knowledge economy. There was a big push to give people an opportunity. So that's why the opportunities just expanded for law, medicine, accounting, across the board. Everybody got an opportunity, accounting, all these different fields.
Even arts and entertainment.
Everything. I mean, but what really flow was and continued was there was not the match between the qualification you had and the development of the country. So unless you wanted to be a teacher, and that's a good thing, you doing a degree in literature or history, which I thought of doing. I love history, but I said I'm not going to make an income from that.
Yeah.
So the point of the matter is you need to discourage people from doing degree program because they're going to frustrate themselves. They're going to be unemployable.
That are not economically viable.
Yeah, and not viable for the country. Remember, we are a new and young country. We cannot be thinking only of our own self. We have to think of the country, and it is the government's responsibility to engage all of us in that dialogue to understand that the education that you pursue then must be tied in to the strategic vision of the country, and that is the feeling. Now, I will say, you might say that I'm just saying this, but I'm saying this. That discussion had already started happening under Patrick Manning because we felt that we had reached a certain mass in terms of, especially tertiary. And when we talk tertiary, is YTEP, COSTAT, and all of that. We felt that we had reached a certain mass in terms of education. So now the time had come now to more rationalization. Now that you brought the community, national community, people who could not afford to do medicine, people who couldn't afford to get into law, people who couldn't afford to do accounting, people who wanted to be trained as electricians and all these different fields. Now they brought it up to a certain mass. The time had come now to make the match between education and the strategic vision of the country 2020. That did not happen under the UNC too. Why they didn't do it? Why you didn't look at the programs
no one has
and
done
say,
it.
huh?
No one has done it.
Nobody did it. But what I'm saying is, yes, what I'm saying is the fault of all the governments is that they did not do that. So you have a lot of people walking around with degrees in political science, history and literature, that unless they want to have a career in teaching, which not all of them do, then it really will make them very frustrated and add to what you call the labor force participation rate being so low because they are unemployed, not because they don't have a qualification, but there's nobody who wants to hire them in commercial enterprise or manufacturing when they have a degree in history.
It's like this. You invest in people's education, but there's no actual plans on what that means for society. It's like saying we invest in the road network and we put new roads down. There's no plans to utilize the land that we now have access to. We just put it on road.
No, that's not true, though. That is not true. That is not true, because when Mr. Manning was there and that whole plan.
I'm not talking about actual plans in road improvements that were
not road improvement, expanding the highways.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about if theoretically you just willy-nilly just drop down new roads anywhere without a plan, without a purpose.
I understand.
Right?
You're absolutely right.
So have a purpose to educate the population, because it's not as though we're so big we could just afford it, and the economy is so big that it could just absorb it.
There's so much brain drain. How many people
leave? Right.
So many people. They don't have jobs.
There's some, I know the commenter has multiple comments. We'll get to at least some of them. But we do have Mr. San Fernando on the line. Good morning, call you on the air.
Morning.
Yeah, morning, Sean.
Morning, morning.
Morning, Karen.
Morning, Mr. San Fernando.
I say that let me look at the budget. The budget lacked two things which you need as the main ingredient for the direction of the government and the country. There was no strategic vision in the budget. There was no strategic direction. It was like you read a paper because you need to read a paper. And this is where the problem lies. This government, as they were in the last iteration of this government, there is no plan to take Trinidad and Tobago where it needs to go. No plan. The caller from Twin City had some things to say. And I want the caller from Twin City to understand something. You can have a conversation about development, but it must include poverty alleviation. And if it doesn't, then the conversation should not be had by the people who want to have the conversation. Trinidad and Tobago is in a situation where we need sustainable development to go along with diversification. And there was no inclination of those two things when Mr. Tanku presented his budget. Looking at Mr. Tanku yesterday in the Standing Finance Committee, he is out of his depth. He really is. And he is speaking with a forked tongue. And Trinidad and Tobago, get ready for the ride, because this is what you're going to get for the next 5 years. Have a good day, Sean and Karen.
Yeah, and you know, it's unfortunate that it is so, you know. Honestly, it is unfortunate because I had really, when I spoke prior to the budget being announced and on the Monday morning, I was really full of hope, but it's really...
One of the things in hindsight, I think I mentioned this just once, in some of the last PNM budgets, and maybe because they were so similar, so it was quick to analyze, yes, right?
And that's how
it was pointed out. It was pointed out that, hey, what is the vision of this budget? Yeah. And I think we were a little bit unfair in the sense of the analysis, because I'm talking the same night, what is the vision? There's no direction. It was a little bit unfair that this budget kind of got a pass on that. I guess because it seemed new, the structure was different, maybe they were offering different things, so people were still trying to figure it out. But now in hindsight, because hey, it's not for us to try to discern what the strategic vision is, it's for you to tell us that. Why, if there is a vision and a direction, why are you hiding it, right? So, and I think we said it about the PNM, it's only fair that we point out, it seems as though, to say what is the philosophy that guides this budget so that the population could say, hey, we're 100% on board. How do we support this budget? How do we participate in the direction that the country is going? We don't really have that. That, to some extent, might be why the private sector has, not saying that the private sector is great at what it does, but it compounds the difficulties of private sector growth.
Okay, but to be the devil's advocate in a way, manner of speaking, they did speak about 5 pillars, and it did remind me a little bit of the PNM Strategic 20.
The 5 pillars?
No, but no, and okay, and the other, okay, and the other thing in all being trying to be objective about it is it comes back to what they call the budget debacle, when it just collapsed. Now,
yes,
I think that I will say that I was disappointed in the opposition, because you have to prepare yourself. You're only 13 years old. You have to prepare yourself for anything that the government, they're not going to try and make you look good. It's your job to make yourself look good. So if you felt towards the end that none of the main speakers were coming, you should have said that not after and hold a press conference or whatever you did. Somebody should have stood up there. You have Colin Imbert, you have Stuart Young. They are seasoned in this business. Stand up and say to the speaker, you're disappointed that the government of the day has failed to put on the ministers who are the line ministers who could have come to the national community and explain what they had in mind, so we could understand what their vision was, if there was any. You could understand what they wanted to do in agriculture in terms of making us food security and so on, because maybe they were going to talk about that. And he did say that the ministers will expand on these various points, which they would have to. I mean, that's their job. So, but where the government failed is when they realized that they're only not the main speakers coming out and defending the budget or explaining the budget.
The different ministries.
Right. They should have realized that. And plus, too, before you go in for these budgets, or any parliamentary setting, you have meetings before. And you decide who's going to talk, and then you have to do the, say, well, in the event it doesn't go this way, look, you have to be ready, because you're sitting on there. It's not so much new things he's saying, you know. Yeah, agriculture, what he said new. You could have hit him with anything in no VAT. He didn't have no VAT, they didn't have VAT before, and agriculture it has so many concessions. Right, so in terms of loans and equipment, and I mean, it's so many that you could have said, what you're bringing new, what you want to know is how you're going to articulate, how you're going to implement this, because you have actually reduced the allocation for agriculture. Not by much, but you reduced it, and that's sending a message, isn't it? That's the sort of thing. So they have to take a lot of responsibility how it turned out, that they did not prepare themselves to then address that early on with the speaker and saying, since the other side has refused, we are red and ready. They like to say when everybody wins. So we are red and ready, and we are prepared to address some of the issues, and we are seeking clarification. And it is unfortunate that this government, knowing very well that there are only 13 of us on this side, is doing this favor to the national community. They're playing politics right here in this parliament, because they know that we don't have enough numbers on this side. They obviously strategized to do what they did. And who are they hurting? Yes, you're hurting the opposition, but you're playing petty politics. Who are you hurting? The people of this country. When you have that gentleman saying they're going to, you don't know any media review, you don't know what they have planned. Well, you know why you have to say that? Everything is a guesstimate. Everything is a guesstimate with this government. Honestly, everything is what they will get, how they're taxing us through they're really taxing us. And then the financing, how much is it going to be financing? What are they going to be selling? What are they going to do with the refinery? Why didn't they deal with the refineries? That's a big line item. So there were a number of things. Also, too, I thought there were areas of concern. They spent a lot of time on the National Lottery Board, but why you didn't spend a lot of time on proclaiming and actually going back to the original version of the Gambling Control and Betting Commission Act. Why didn't you? Because right now we're operating under some 1963 legislation that allows these private member clubs to operate with impunity, and they are not private members club, but they had the definition. You could join it in 24 hours, you could join. I mean, that's the old legislation. What is going on with that? That is a major source of money laundering. That's a major source of organized crime. And also the revenue that you need. Why are you talking about the lottery board so much? Why didn't you talk about you are going to go back to the original version with the 3/5 majority, which you have, and passing a legislation as a matter of urgency? Because the government needs, and this is a source of revenue which we should support. That's then the campaign financing. Why didn't you make that part of your thing, saying that the campaign financing? Because you reckon that's another way for hemorrhaging money from the country, that the government of the day can use its position to be able to utilize monies that should go to schools and so on for their campaigns. Why didn't you talk about the procurement legislation section 7, which you said you need to amend to remove those restrictions on what the procurement regulator can deal with? Why didn't you deal with refinery? Why didn't you tell us that you are going to have the procurement regulations passed in order to give the Office of Procurement Regulation the authority to oversee the sale or lease of the refinery. And yes, gentlemen, sir, you were right. They closed down the refinery, and it was wrong. I mean, and we spoke about it, and I agree with you. Two wrongs do not make a right. Please, don't say this, did this, and that we should do this and did. So where the country is going with that kind of conversation? I agree with you about the refinery. I agree with you. And they had an opportunity to address it. Why didn't they address it? Why didn't they talk about the National Statistical Institute? All that data they have is lag data. It is not updated. The only one that they don't have that's lag, it's hardly anything. It's hardly anything. So why didn't you talk about that? Why did you talk about the you know, when Colin Burt was there, he had an economic advisory board, and it fell apart in two twos.
Yeah.
Right?
Really
And you know why it could? Because it had no statutory authority. So putting this Financial Oversight Appropriation Committee and establishment of Economic Resilience Board, that's good, but make it legislated so that no government minister or anybody could wake up one morning and say, see, I don't like how this thing going, I'm shutting it down.
All right.
I didn't talk about that.
We have Kunupia back on the line. Caller, welcome back.
Hello, yes.
Morning, morning.
Morning.
Go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Shera?
Yeah.
Yeah. I get on live?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Shera, I didn't mean when I said some sidetracking was you know. I tried to listen to everybody so I could give my comment and things.
Okay, no problem.
But what I was talking about is sidetracking was about listening to everybody and not personal attack on you. The other thing I asked, if you had a mid-year review, I was saying wait for the mid-year review, but I never hear about a mid-year review, and only recently I hear about this mid-year review. But what I'm saying is, if they have something, the 10%, yes, they say 10%. They say 10% before the budget, but the minister saying that okay, they have to negotiate how they're going to pay out the 10%. Remember, they had 14% and they reject that, you know.
Okay,
and now they're taking up 10%.
No,
thank you.
Thank you. I understand the general principle, but the thing is, when you're crafting the budget, there's a reasonable expectation that we're going to have this amount of money to pay. And you can't not plan for that in your budget. That's not responsible.
And just to be clear, I'm glad you told me that. I'm glad you called back, because media reviews are always there. And it's, it's the media reviews. If you go on the Ministry of Finance website, you will see the budget statement and the media review. Because why you have a media review is because what you plan for in the budget, sometimes it doesn't materialize. Remember, we are an energy-based economy, and one thing we know about energy is it's very volatile. One day it's $100, next day it's $23, it's really volatile. So, and since you plan a lot of your allocation of budgetary allocation based on the estimated price of oil and gas to come to your budget numbers, you have to understand by the mid-year review, things might have changed for good or for worse. And sometimes if it's changed for good, a lot of ministries that would come to you when the prices are not doing so well and the outlook isn't so good, you might have to tell them you can't get this because we just don't have it. It's a finite pie. It's not a, it's not a hole, a black hole. Meaning, in terms of, is it astronomy? Astronomy, yes. In any event, the point is, yes, we always have a mid-year review, sir. And yes, the minister did stick his neck out, because you cannot come to a fiscal deficit and an expenditure when you have already committed to a 10% and now backtracking on it, and you have not factored into your budgetary expenditure the NIS. You did not do it, and what the opposition pointed out to the minister is that you have line items, but there's only 50 line items, and that comes up to only $50,000 in revenue. I believe that's what he said, or $50,000 in revenue. And that when you add those line items, which he left out, the expenditure is not what he's saying of $54 billion. It's not, so the fiscal deficit is not 3.8. It is more $9 billion, because the real difference between the actual revenue is $50 billion and the real expenditure, if you add in things that he left out, which he knew he had committed to, if you add it in the budget, because it was not a line item, it comes up to more like $9 billion, but they don't want to look bad. because they want to say the PNM only playing politics, you know. Yeah, you know what is my concern, and I'll hand it over to Sean. You know what, Michael, and this is speaking personally now, speaking personally. I criticize both. I'm sure I have no friends on either side. I'm sure they like me at one point when I say things bad about one. I'm sure they like me. You know, that's the name of the game. But you know what? You know what my responsibility is? I feel I love my country, Trinidad and Tobago. I really do. You know, I really am committed. So when I say things that I do say, it is not to make the government of the day look bad or the other government look bad. It's and educate everyone as much as I know. Just give you the knowledge I know, so that you can make a more informed decision, and let us really unite as a country. I use example finally on that is did I talk about it on this program with Ethiopia?
No, but let's
no, it's not going to be long.
I have a lot to get through. Let's get the first comment first and then go with the last comment, right? So, okay, a couple of things on this comment I put down. Loopholes in the system. This goes back to what Karen said with regards to certain reforms. They don't want to close the loopholes. That's the going theory. Why would they want to? How do you get them to do that? They need to be forced by the public demanding it. And we don't have that right now, right? Now, there's certain other things there with regards to unemployment and economics. I'll just say this. The third part there, governments can cut expenses by constructing affordable, readily available housing units. Many benefits this can be regarded as diversification. Well, they already do that, so it wouldn't be diversification. That's point number one. Point number two, the problem is because of the inefficiencies of government, I think there's limitations on that. Other countries have the private sector provide low-income housing. It's economically viable. You regulate it to make sure there's no exploitation. It's fine. There are different ways to do it. To say the government alone should be doing it, I think we should be looking at things that the private sector can't do, which is infrastructure projects, particularly right now, and I'll say this to the cops come home, we did get lip service to the spring budget. Road improvements and expansion, but also we have water shortages and flooding problems, sometimes on the same day. I don't know, maybe infrastructure work that could be a 2-for-1 there could also prevent people from losing thousands of dollars whenever their homes flood. Let's go to this last set of comments, because I want to get the minister's reasoning is that you can't budget for something that hasn't been agreed upon yet. I understand that. The point is you don't have to get the figure correct. You don't have to get the figure 100% what it is, and if you get it wrong, the whole budget falls apart. You estimate your revenue.
That's what you do.
Right? You estimate the amount of money, because how is it that you're going to say, oh no, it's fine, we have a deficit of 3 billion, and let's not even worry about what the deficit could be when the intention is 10%, right? That is, and I hate to say this, but if you're buying what the minister is selling, right, that is one of the most amateur things that the Minister of Finance has said with regards to this budget. Oh, well, we just don't know, so how could you have an intention? Exactly. You don't have to get it perfect, you don't have to get it right, but you have to be responsible for, say, based on our intention, we will allocate this amount of money. Here's the thing, one of the reasons why they don't want to say that is, if they allocate low, the union will say, what, you mean we're not getting 10%? Right? So he is basically playing games with the situation. Make a supplementary provision if necessary. Right. But what does it allow him to do if you're doing it that way? It allows you to present a deficit that is so much nicer than any PNM deficit in the last 5 years, right? He said the proper thing to do is wait until there's an agreed upon figure. No, it's not.
You agreed upon it.
I'm sorry, but let's be clear. He is the only person that the media considers an economist that I'm aware of that is limited to a bachelor's in economics. I don't call myself an economist, right? The former Minister of Finance here does not call herself an economist.
I can't.
Right? But I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying, and this is his first budget. I had questions with regards to his capacity before. I have them now. Because that is not the responsible thing to do. I'm sorry, right? That is not the proper thing to do. That is, it's not as bad as the former Minister of Finance not understanding what an audit is. But on principle, this is what a budget is. This is what a budget is. To be prepared to say what is the realistic expected financial position. And you're basically saying, oh, well, because we don't know, we'll just ignore an expected expense. Well then, hey, maybe that should be assigned to the PSA and the other unions. 0% is definitely on the table then. Definitely on the table. If they don't need to prepare any sort of allocation, we can't just blame the government and say they have no plan. Well, Here's the thing, and it gets me to the point that I want to close with. Because first of all, I want to point out for people that think that Karen is defending the PNM in this situation, she started off criticizing how they handled the budget wind-up. Let's make that clear. She was suggesting what they could have done. She was saying what she wished that they did. I see we have some more comments here.
We don't have time.
Yeah, we don't have time. We don't have time, right?
They have a good thing to do with the NIF.
Right? But I'll say this. Think about what the government was doing. When the opposition had no one left to speak, they wound up the debate in the House. How many ministers of serious portfolios spoke? Because there were a lot of things that sounded nice in the 5.5-hour budget presentation that was not expanded upon. And for good reason. I thank Minister Tanku for not going 8.5 hours. I don't know if he would have survived it, but I thank him for that. It could have been shorter. It could have been shorter because we would have expected the ministers to now have to speak. In fact, right now, one of the less senior ministers is getting roughed up in the current Standing Finance Committee debate. It seems as though she's not necessarily as well prepared as she should be. And it leads me to wonder, is this government not prepared or for whatever reason unwilling to explain in detail what this budget is? Because it seems as though their plan was to say, we'll trot out all the first-timers, all the junior ministers, right? And when the opposition expends their 13th and final speaker, the Minister of Finance could wind this up. We don't have to get energy to talk. We don't have to get trade and industry and tourism to talk. We don't have to get agriculture to talk, etc., etc., etc. We don't have to get public utilities, local government. Did any of them talk? I can't remember. Maybe I missed somebody, right? But the opposition should have picked up on it sooner, right? The thing is, why do we think that the government would have continued and have those ministers make comment on this budget, make contributions, when it seemed as though they wanted, based on how they handled it themselves, to wrap it up as soon as the opposition gave them a chance to do it? We have to ask the question, are they purposely hiding anything?
And the opposition is to blame too.
Right? The opposition is to blame too, yes. Because they let them off the hook. They let them off the hook.
Yeah.
But is the government trying? We have to ask the question. I'm not saying they are.
You can't see it.
Because we don't know what the vision is.
Look like that.
We don't know what the methodology is. We don't know what the philosophy is. It sure looks like there isn't any, and maybe that's what they're hiding. So when the minister says it's a good budget, here's the thing. Here's the thing, to borrow a quote from Game of Thrones, any man that has to say he is king is no king. Any minister of finance that has to say, my budget is great, well, I don't know, maybe you'll be known by the qualities that is espoused in the opinions of your enemies and detractors, not necessarily people that's biased for you. If the opposition could say it's a good budget, if people in the middle could say it's a good budget, well, fine. If you yourself have to repeatedly say it's a good budget, don't tell us it's a good budget. Show us it's a good budget. And that's what we're waiting on. And that's the crux of most 90% of the complaints. Not that, okay, the budget is bad, but what you've given us ain't looking good. So if it is good, show us more. Because this is the future of the country, unfortunately. All right, I've gone on too long. So I'm sorry, we can't take the last comment. Maybe we'll take it tomorrow. We'll take it. No, because you know what? I still hope for the best, but unfortunately, politics has taught us all, when you think about it, everybody, to expect the worst. It's just that when you're side in power, the blinders are on, right? I don't have a side, so I just expect the worst all the time, and I rather not do that. And I thought we could have gotten away from that, and I just don't want to be disappointed again, so I'm holding out hope. Right? Because, listen, at the end of the day, the saying is technically true. When the government wins, we all win. When the government loses, the reverse is true. We all lose too. Let's not hope for that. But we have to call a spade. Right? Thanks to the callers, thanks to the commenters. I'm sorry for the one that I couldn't get to today. Yes, I understand it was the whole PNM who in power long enough kind of thing, but we could rehash that till the cows come home. We'll take it on another day. Thanks, Karen, for joining me once again. I hope that there's more on this budget to talk about, and maybe the Standing Finance Committees will reveal more. Right? But Jesus, please, because I'll just, last thing, the complaint with the PNM, why are you hiding so much? How did we get back here? Is this not supposed to be better? Right? Stay safe. Enjoy. Remember your allegiance to Republic and to each other. Remember it's nice to be nice. Have a good day. We'll see each other tomorrow. Bye-bye.
WESN